what we're going to cover today is a session that is intended to bring everybody in the district on the same page with their knowledge with Web Community Manager. So we will be covering the basics in this 3-hour session approximately. We're going to talk about website structure. We're going to talk about the Style Guide, which was developed in conjunction with PIO and DDI. We're going to talk about accessibility, primarily using Microsoft Word, but I'll mention Adobe Acrobat and Grackle for Google Docs. We'll also talk about Ally for accessibility, which is a tool that lets you look at your website and see what documents and pages aren't entirely accessible. And then we'll actually go into Web Community Manager and learn about creating sections, creating pages, working with apps. And at the very end, we'll talk about files and folders on Web Community Manager and how to best manage those and get your stuff cleaned up. Okay. As we go through the process, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and we'll go on from there. Okay. So first thing I'd like you to do is open this LCPS Blackboard Tools site, and everything we're going to be talking about will be in the Blackboard Web Community Manager. It's kind of the agenda for the course. So if you open this page, you'll see the agenda that we're covering today. And one thing I'd like to point out to you before we leave this page, we'll come back later in the session. If you scroll down, there is a section called All About Apps, and there is a link to a website that was created and populated by Blackboard, and it shows all the apps that are available so that you can see what they do and what they look like before you try to use them on your site. That was my biggest trouble in learning this tool, is what does this app do? What does this look like? And so you get to see it with full content. Okay, but we'll come back to that later. So let's go on to website structure. And again, a lot of this you may already know, but I don't know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. Okay? So we're giving the same session to everyone so that everybody's on the same page. So the website structure. LCPS.org has multiple sites associated with that domain. Each school is its own site, as it was before. The departments within LCPS each have their own site now. Okay, so their sites. And then, of course, we have the main LCPS.org site for the district. And what is a website? What's the structure, and how is it defined in Web Community Manager? So think of your site as a filing cabinet, and within a filing cabinet we've got drawers. What are in those drawers? Within those drawers we have file folders. Within file folders typically there's paper, and on paper you've got the content, whether it be pictures or text. So in that same vein, your site is the filing cabinet. The drawers in the filing cabinet are your channels. Within a channel are the sections, which are your hanging folders. And within a section are the pages, which are the papers in those hanging folders. And then on those pages are the apps that hold the content. So you can have a bunch of pages out there, and if they don't have apps on them, nothing shows to the public. Okay. So let me give you a quick example. So I'm going to go to a site who hasn't yet converted. So here's Meadowland. These are all the channels. We're going to go down to 3. About, academic, and resources. So everything, all these other channels, you can either choose to redirect to one of those 3 channels, or you can move the content into the appropriate channel. And that will be done today. Okay. Within the channel, and let me find one that has, okay. Within a channel are sections. And so here's all the sections. Within a section, we have the default page and all these other pages. Okay. So the pages within a section drive the left navigation that shows up. Any questions about the structure? Okay, let's go on. Style guide. Part of the conversion was to get responsive sites for mobile devices and tablets, and to provide consistency and accessibility for every single site in LCPS. And basically we want to have, and we'll look at the style guide in a second, but the goal is to have clear and concise writing. People don't want to read paragraphs of stuff, so think about a main idea, some bullet points, short and sweet, to the point. We want to make color and font consistent. So there are built-in fonts in our template that encourage this. However, there's some apps out there that let you change the font. We're recommending that that doesn't happen. And we want you to organize your content on a page, or if you're uploading a document, those documents should be organized using headings. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into accessibility and using Word and so forth. So let's go to the style guide. And take a look at some of this information. There is a ton of really good information here. Most of the stuff here is information that has been determined via collaboration with PIO and DDI, who put the content up here for everyone to use. And the other content is a lot of curated links. So there's a lot of really good resources here for you, and I recommend that you review everything. We don't have enough time today to go through it all, but I want to show you some important concepts that we are trying to make consistent across the district. And then at any time you can come back and review this stuff. So we talked about this. The goal is to get consistent and accessible sites. Let's look at the colors tab first. So the template has some built-in colors, and you will be changing the colors this afternoon to coordinate with your school's color scheme or logo, whatever you want. So everything that we're looking at in this section is with respect to the main LCPS site, but when you change the colors represented will reflect those that you've selected at your school. First and foremost, I want to talk about the editing tools. And you guys are familiar with this. Remember, we're just putting a new skin on. The product itself is not changed. So the editing tools are the same. The F drop-down menu in the content app or any other app that lets you format text contains all the styles that you should use to format your text. It contains the structural H1 through H6, if you know HTML. They're heading 1 through heading 6. Those are there to provide your structure of your content on a page. Additionally, there are some other just plain styling font styles. So those are available. We'll see those in a sec. The feather, you're going to use that to change the size of the font. Larger, small, extra large, and so forth. I'm just urging you to stay away from the T option because that contains the default Blackboard Web Community Manager styles, and they don't necessarily work well with our template because the spacing is different, the color scheme is different, and so forth. All right. Another thing that we're going to be concerned about is color contrast. Just for your information, you need to have a 4.5 to 1 contrast ratio. And there is a tool right here where you can pick 2 colors to make sure it meets that ratio. So these are the template colors, and they coordinate with the styles in that F menu when you're editing text. So these are the LCPS.org colors. You'll change these in your template, but the primary color is the red. Your primary text will remain white. LCPS.org's secondary color is this burgundy, and then there's an accent color of optimistic blue. But this is what I want to point out. These are not the H1 through H6 styles, but these are the options to style your text without structural implications. So primary editor style will be your primary color in the background with white text. Your secondary editor will be the secondary color with white. There's a gray border which has your secondary color on white and your accent color on white. And then most people don't change this one, the gray background editor style, they just leave it as gray. And it's not really used in that many places anyway. So those are the colors, and you will be changing a fair amount of those today. If you are not sure, you can leave some of the defaults, see how it looks, and you can always go back into your template, make some tweaks, and republish. Okay? But the goal today is really to make sure that most of your main colors, the primary and secondary colors, are set. Let's go into content and presentation standards. Again, a lot of this is repeated because we want to make sure that everybody gets it, but we want to make our website usable, including people who use assistive technology. So we want clear and effective, consistent navigation. We want content to be well organized, and we want stuff to be simple. If you need to provide more information, you can link to another page with detail. You can provide a downloadable document, whatever works for you, but clear, simple, organized. There is some information here in this section that I'd like to cover. Does anybody know what this app is called? Okay. This is called an accordion app. And the reason being is that when you click on it, it opens to display the content inside. It's really important as you design your site, especially the subsequent pages, that you think about what it's going to look like on a mobile device, because more and more people are using their phones and tablets as their primary source to access LCPS.org. So for consistency and for transparency, first and foremost, we want to make sure that the last modified date checkbox is set up for every section. But all the sections should be set up with this. When we create a new section, I will show you how to make sure that feature is turned on. And what does it do? It displays this last modified date at the bottom of every page in that section. Okay. The next information that we'd like to make sure that everyone is on the same page and is consistent with: providing descriptive link text. So click here or more is not a good idea. It's not helpful to the user. And we don't want you to write out the URLs either. Okay. So frowny face, please click here to complete the complaint form. Someone using assistive technology doesn't know what click here means. Please use the complaint form, and then you have this very long, hard to read URL. Again, that's a frowny face. However, please complete the complaint form is what we're looking for. All right, I mentioned this before. Whether your content is on a web page or it's in a Google Doc that you're sharing or in a Word doc that's been published to a PDF, the document should have structure. Meaning, how many of you have used styles in Microsoft Word? Okay. So Word has styles labeled heading 1 through heading 9 or 10, okay? And they provide structure in an outline fashion in the document. And so the goal for everything that's out there is to have a heading 1 with whatever content, and if there's a subtopic, use a heading 2 to format your text. And then if there's, again, a couple subtopics below heading 2, use heading 3. But don't skip over heading 1 in favor of heading 3 because you like the way the styling looks better. Okay. The accessibility checker that runs on lcps.org, which is called Ally, will tag that as an error. So basically, heading 1, here's your heading 2s, here's back to a heading 1, some heading 2s, and so on. So think outline. And that goes, like I said, on your Web Community Manager page, in Word docs, in Google Docs, and so forth. Okay. We've talked about this a little bit, but we want to keep the writing short, concise. Use a lot of visuals where you can. Again, it's super easy on a phone to tap a photo and get more info or an image than to have to read and determine. Okay, so use visuals as many as you can. Use an active voice, a consistent verb tense. Make it easy to understand. Use a familiar and conversational tone. And I didn't know this before. Exclamation points should be avoided. I'll let you go through the format and expression consistency and capitalization. That's just some information that you can certainly make sense of on your own. File names and folder names. It's recommended to not use spaces in the names of the files that you load into Web Community Manager. And the same goes for any folders that are created to hold those files in Web Community Manager. And the reason being, if you look at this example, this file is called file space with space so and so and so, okay? The URL, wherever there is a space, a %20 gets inserted. So it makes the URL very difficult to read. And if someone is listening to it, they're getting all this extra gobbledygook that they don't need to hear. So again, don't use spaces in the files that get uploaded. And in folder names, don't use spaces, and try to not use special characters. Anticipated and future content. This is a really great tip. You want people to know when they can come back to see this new stuff. So if you're working on something new, don't use that coming soon or under construction. Let them know this will be out April 1st, or this will be out November 30th. For links to documents or files, you need to let the browser, the person who's looking at your site, know what to expect when they click the link. So if the document is a PDF, you can include PDF in parens, which is the simplest way to do it. If it's a Word doc, DOC. If it's Excel, XLS or XLSX, and so forth. If you like to get fancy, there is a guide right here that shows you how to take these images that are stored at the very top level of lcps.org and style your links referencing those images. Okay. You may or may not have seen this image, this A with a downward pointing arrow. What that means is that the document that's there is in a format that's accessible. And clicking that link allows the user to download any of these alternative formats. So electronic braille or an audio version for listening. But we want to make sure that all our documents have that little icon so that they're accessible. So there's some sections there that I skipped, but please make sure that you go back and just review them. Most of them are pretty short and straightforward. All right, let's look at general principles. Again, highly usable. We've mentioned that. User-friendly. This one we haven't really mentioned in detail. Responsive to all screen sizes. Do you know what actually happens on a responsive website? It adapts to the device. And let me give you an example. I'm going to come back to the current template. So the current or the old school templates were not responsive. And you can very easily do a quick and dirty test by changing the width of a browser window on a website. And you'll notice that it's cutting the content off. We're losing stuff. All right. This is not a responsive template. So on a mobile device, everything just shrinks and it doesn't shift around. However, the new templates, and if we use this as an example, your left column stays, and then everything else shifts and wraps. So as we get to beyond a tablet width, that general principle stuff drops off and can be seen beneath the information. All right. So it's way more usable on a mobile device. That being said, keep in mind how many pages you want to show in the left navigation. You may have a section that might have 40 pages. You don't want all of them to show up here. That would be a nightmare on a phone, having to scroll down beyond that. So I'll show you how you can hide certain pages from website navigation, although include them via a link from another page. Okay. So that's one thing to consider. All right, the reference link library. These are basically curated links, and there is a ton of really good information here. If you are new to accessibility, as many in LCPS are, some Accessibility 101 information video is a really great resource. Here's the Grackle accessibility. We'll talk about that. Create and verify PDF accessibility. Here's some curated links from Blackboard site and some other ones as well, both of these guys. How many of you use a Google Calendar at your school? Okay, so you're probably going to want to integrate that calendar with the CMS Web Community Manager calendar. And there's information here and some tips. And then there's some reference information and a secondary set of reference info. So there's a lot of really good information here. Site hygiene. We're going to talk about this a little bit more when we get to files and folders. But really the goal is to clean out the old documents that are not being shared with the public. A lot of folks use the storage in the cloud, the Web Community Manager, files and folders, as a place to archive stuff. And that's not the purpose. So part of the conversion will be communicating to anyone who has a section or edits a page to make sure that they go in there, clean out all the old files. By doing that, that's going to make your website a lot easier to get up to the point of having a good accessibility score. And it will make searching lcps.org a lot better. Because you can search lcps.org for, say, parking pass and find information from 2011, 2012, 2013. That shouldn't happen. What we want out there is when someone searches lcps.org is to find the most current updated information and not historical, unless it's something that really needs to be, like budgeting and planning and that sort of stuff. But stuff that changes from year to year, we want to clean out. And then one thing I want to mention, and we didn't know this before, but when you decide that you no longer need a section, make sure that you delete any files, documents, or images in that section first before the section gets deleted. And typography. I mentioned this a teeny bit. Our template uses Roboto and Hallant. And the cool thing about those is they are Google Web fonts. So that whatever device is viewing your page, as long as you stick with those fonts, and most of the apps don't let you change a font. Some of the older ones do, so just stay away from that. Those Google Web fonts will look the same on a Windows machine, on a Mac, on an Android device, on an iPhone, etc. So Roboto is sans serif, and most of the body text is Roboto, and Hallant is used mostly for headings and some links and labels. So basically what I'm telling you is if you're working in an app that lets you change the font, don't. Okay? And then this is just, I just wanted to share this image with you because it's a really good message. Web accessibility creates a website that's better for everyone, not just people with disabilities. If the navigation is clear, if the content is organized, if we've got headings, clear links, designation as to information for files, etc., people know what they're getting, and it's easier for everybody.